Hello and welcome to the How to Exit podcast, where we introduce you to a world of small to medium business acquisitions and mergers. We interview business owners, industry leaders, authors, mentors, and other influencers with the sole intent to share with you what it looks like to buy or sell a business. Let's get rolling. And now a moment for our sponsors. I want to highly recommend you get Acquisition Aficionado magazine. Every month, Acquisition Aficionado magazine brings you tactics for business buying and selling you won't find anywhere else. Learn firsthand from industry leaders who share their success stories, featuring in-depth interviews and stories from leading figures in the business acquisition industry. This multi-platform mobile magazine speaks to acquisition entrepreneurs wherever they are in the journey. And I want you to visit acquisitionaficionado.com today. Hello and welcome to the How to Exit podcast. Today I'm here with Nate Ginsburg, and this is a revisit. We've had you on the show once before, way back in episode 70. We're on 220 something, almost 230 now. So great to meet up with you again. You and I chatted a little bit last week, and we decided this would be a cool thing to do. You had a couple companies before, and it looks like you've added at least one more. Now you got a small holdco. So thank you for being here today. And let's just kind of give people a brief overview of what your companies are and who you are, and then we'll jump into the fun stuff.
Sure. Well, yeah, thanks for having me back. The first interview was right after I acquired, company number 2, which is Centurica, and provide due diligence and quality of earnings services. So working with buyers on their acquisitions. So I think that was the focus, of kind of DD, Q of E for that first show. And fast forward, well, I guess we'll first rewind. When I acquired company number 2, had company number 1, which was I started in end of 2017, beginning of 2018, and is a full service Amazon agency. And so we work with individuals and brands, helping them sell more on Amazon, manage their supply chain. That company has really been slow and steady. At the time of the acquisition, I thought that the new company was really going to be the focus moving forward. And, it's certainly been a big focus. But yeah, this year, kind of zooming out a little bit, and the first half year of a new acquisition there's a lot of transitioning, and it's kind of hectic, and things have sort of calmed down, or operationally have been smoothed out. I have a much better grip on running that business now, 2 years in, or 1 year in, versus right around the transition. And yeah, then so some of my focus has shifted back toward that first company, which kind of in the background, I've had a great team running that one for a long time, and still do. But yeah, there's some exciting stuff going on there that I'm getting kind of back more involved in. And then, yeah, the third company was launched with my co-founder, vertically integrating with the Amazon agency. And that is a freight forwarding business. So NTMK Logistics. And yeah, so that's going on 2 years old. I guess that's the newest. And a lot of lessons in the first 2 years. Feel good about the second half of this year and the direction things are going. But yeah, as in everything, all the businesses, ups and downs, lots of learnings as well as challenges. And so we can kind of chat more about this, but it's interesting having 3 different companies to kind of learn different lessons through and from that you can then apply to the other businesses is one of the things that's kind of where my headspace has been lately.
It's interesting. You've got 3 different businesses, and I think you said earlier, quite a few employees. And I'm sitting here thinking it takes 2 to 3 employees just to keep me on schedule, where I'm supposed to be, in the meetings I'm supposed to be. I have a personal assistant, a person that edits the videos, and then a marketing manager that markets everything. We just brought her on this week. I couldn't imagine, and I've had bigger companies. I've worked for many companies where I had over 100 employees. To have them in a diverse locations and stuff like that, how does that look? Are all 3 businesses, I think you're in Austin, right? If I ever have another excuse to go back to Austin, I'll be there in a heartbeat. I love Austin. But that said, are the physical parts of your businesses located there?
I'm the only part of the business that's in Austin, and with all the companies, I mean, we have global teams,
Mhm.
big teams in Philippines, in Pakistan, South America, Eastern Europe, got people in Western Europe. I mean, we work with some contractors that are around the US, but yeah, overwhelmingly have global talent supporting all the businesses.
Interesting. When I thought logistics, I'm thinking you had physical trucks picking up physical products and moving physical items. So what is the logistics company doing?
Yeah, so the logistics industry is massive. Stuff that I've learned a lot about since co-founding this business, but I think the logistics industry I read is like $7.8 trillion
That's
globally.
huge, right? Yeah.
It's huge, and kinda to your comment, it encompasses a lot of things. So there is the trucking side and people physically with trucks moving things from A to B. It's shipping containers and container companies or, shipping companies that are moving the freight. And then, I guess, like, our business is more like brokering and coordinating, so all these things. And so we are focused on a lot of moving containers from Asia to America and vice versa. And in doing so, and we have clients and we'll move freight that will, get on trucks and get on rail, but we work with, other, like, it'll be other trucking companies that actually are physically have the trucks driving the goods, but we will be booking them for clients. And so yeah, that's kind of where we are.
I used to go to a lot of the entrepreneurial things where you have meetups and people would pitch just to get the inspiration and the ideas. And I met a guy who was doing a couple $1,000,000 a year on Amazon, and he was pretty much selling everything from flashlights to heavy duty charger cables and that type of stuff. And we were talking. I guess the reason I run a podcast now is I'm insanely curious. That's just my nature. So we
Mm,
probably talked for 2 hours. I went and took him to lunch just to learn the insides and out of his business. And one thing I didn't understand is for him to buy something overseas, he had to do one or two things. He either had to find something, sounds like something you guys would be doing. He either had to find a freight broker that would allow him to use a quarter of a shipping container, or he had to buy a complete shipping container of whatever he bought, right? He had to, these things don't ship typically empty. And he's like, I either order it by the shipping container for it. So if you think of things like cell phone cases and charger cables, that's a lot. Or he would just use sometimes he said, "I just go to freight brokers and say, 'Hey, I need a quarter of a container. Do you got anything that's not quite full?'" And that's how he got his stuff around. And I didn't even know that world existed, right? That somebody's out there trying to mix and match the jigsaw, the Tetris of, like, getting containers logistically pulled in from one location to the other. Plus, he was in Oklahoma, so not only did he have to get one full and over here, he had to get something that was gonna be delivered similar to some port he would want to, have it picked up from.
yeah, the logistics industry is incredibly interconnected, and that's something that's been I've been learning, just kind of getting more experience and exposure with this company is, well, yeah, within the logistics industry, there's tons of collaboration between different forwarders, and it's like, oh, well, like, I've got half a container, you've got half a container, we can consolidate, and we're all going to save money. Or it's like, I have, this infrastructure of getting the goods from A to B, and you have this infrastructure of getting them from B to C. So we'll collaborate and we'll use you for that part that you're strong, and you'll use us for the part that we're strong. And so, yeah, I mean, it's such a massive global industry, and there's so many pieces to all these very complex puzzles of getting whatever from where it is to where it needs to be. And so, yeah, that's one thing that's been really interesting is just seeing how much, like, collaboration is, happening behind the scenes with the different companies to service whatever the end customer.
I'm fascinated by the whole process that, multi-trillion-dollar industry, millions of moving parts, everything from the last minute or last mile, the UPS drivers that actually pick it up at a warehouse somewhere and bring it to you, all the way up to, that originated in a shipping container from some warehouse in China or Japan or wherever it was made. And you don't really think about when I think I ordered something off of Amazon, I just did it right before the call. I burned up my cross shredder. I killed it. So I just jumped on and I got one that could eat 24 sheets at a time, so I won't kill it. And it's supposed to be there tomorrow. And you think about the logistics that I don't know where it's set when I click the button, but somebody ran and grabbed that thing and put it on a truck or a trailer. It ended up in an airplane, or whatever, and it's going to show up at our place less than 24 hours probably from when I click the button. That's not something I grew up with, something that's around now, but I'm a little older than you. I remember, you order something in a magazine or you order something out and you could wait 25, 30 days for somebody to bring it by.
Yeah, a lot of improvements in global logistics and more coming.
It's interesting. And so you do all three of your businesses then are not your traditional brick and mortar. You don't have a warehouse, a 10,000 square foot warehouse where you're storing stuff and you're doing storing shipping. You're doing the software side of it, the negotiation side of it, the selling side of it, that type of stuff.
Yeah, all of them. I'd say my career started in 2012, 13, and was very inspired by just like online business. It was kind of like there's a kind of community that I joined of people that like read the 4 Hour Work Week and became inspired, and we're traveling all around the world. I moved to Asia. I was living in Vietnam and Thailand and all over. And this whole community, the thread was really like location independent business or just online business. And so yeah, that really was my or is my background. And I'll say with Centurica and the quality of earning, we're more exposed. I mean, we work on these days, it's gonna be close to 50-50 of like online businesses versus brick and mortar SMB type businesses. And so I'm learning a lot and kind of getting exposed to more of the, in person. And obviously there's opportunities with both. Part of me feels a pull to, I mean, at least at some point, get into more SMB kind of physical location type stuff. Also, I know that it's different. A lot of the skill that I've built that have served me well in my online business career, some are transferable, but some aren't. And specifically, like I've really built a core competency around recruiting, and especially like global recruiting and being able to find, attract, and retain really amazing people from anywhere in the world. And while some of that experience is going to be relevant to recruiting in person, a lot of it isn't. And so yeah, and that's not to say that can't figure things out and whatnot, and there's different benefits. But yeah, I guess like anything, there's different advantages and disadvantages.
When last time we spoke, you were doing primarily e-commerce, right? You guys were mostly online. What's the lessons you've learned now that you're going and helping do due diligence on non-brick and mortar? I mean, sorry, you added in brick and mortar. So was there any ahas or anything that said, "Oh, wow, this is way different"?
I mean, the general scope has changes a bit. I mean, I think like I guess when I took over, a big initiative was really building out our core team. And so I don't remember exactly the state of the operations when we had our interview, but as a part of the acquisition, I had to rebuild/build the ops team because one of the co-owners was like the lead analyst. And so, yeah, I found this amazing woman, Paula, very professional background, Deloitte accountant, HSBC, Cargill, very experienced and professional and qualified. And the scope around the online businesses was primarily, and I guess for most projects still is, around really financial verification. And so rebuilding and verifying the P&L, the profit and loss statement. So verifying revenues, expenses, add backs is the core of that deliverable. And with these online businesses that don't have very much like assets, that's usually what is needed for that's like as good as you would want. But then, when it comes to some more of these, I don't know, kind of more traditional SMBs that have more assets, that's really where like a Q of E is going to be more relevant and important. And so, yeah, with Paula, she was somebody who, in her career before coming to Centurica, she was working on 100 million, multi-hundred million, different type, projects and this. And so her coming down to work on these $1, $2, $3, $5, $10 million deals is quite a lot less complicated. With her experience, we were able to add more traditional Q of E, which is what a lot of the searchers want and need. And, that is going to be a lot more relevant for businesses with more assets. So a Q of E covers also a balance sheet rebuild and then kind of goes into different ratios and analysis involving both the balance sheet and the P&L, as well as there's other kind of scope included in that. Q of E's I've learned is it's not like a one size fits all. I mean, there is some standard deliverables in that, but it's not like there isn't like a very clearly defined Q of E scope from everyone. Anyway, but in Q of E, it does include more balance sheet and kind of like more like holistically looking at the company, which was something that by bringing on Paula, she was able to help us expand our deliverables into the Q of E. The Q of E is the core piece that these searchers want and need for their SMB deals. And so yeah, that's kind of what enabled us to expand into that area. And then also just, from my owner's seat, just by volume, there's so many more traditional acquisitions going on versus online. And so the addressable market for, non-online acquisitions is just so much larger. And
Yeah.
so and I mean, that as well as there's been definitely like a decline in e-com acquisitions the last few years. And so, yeah, all of that's kind of combined with us focusing more on, yeah, I mean, we're still happy to do e-com deals and we're very good at e-com deals. And we're happy and, very capable of doing really any type of business.
Interesting. The 2, 3 years ago when I got into this space, it wasn't as popular. I think there's been a lot of shift in the market to where being buying a trades related company has become not only more popular, but it's kind of the end thing to do. I don't hang out on TikTok and stuff a lot, but the wife was like, "Hey, do you realize how much?" Because we just started getting actively about putting these shorts on there. We tried it a long time ago, and there wasn't that many people interested, so we kind of backed off. And then my wife was saying, "Do you realize how many people are like talking about what you're doing on there?" But that said, I started looking through there, put the app back on my phone, started messing with it and realizing that there's a push right now. There's a huge thing with the youth where people are really thinking it's kind of cool to be in the trades and to own the trades. And then they're adding product, and they're adding swag to their trades, right? So I think the landscape changes over time. When I was, in my 30s and stuff, and even like I'm old enough to tell you when I came out of the military, the end thing was e-commerce, right? Figure out e-commerce. Amazon was I got to ride the Amazon wave and see it grow. But in the last year and a half, 2 years, I think there's been a big push to revitalize the trades and bring them back.
Yeah. I mean, I think, like you said, well, a few things to kind of touch on there. One is, kind of cycles, and especially when it comes to like biz ops and what people are teaching or promoting different types of opportunities. I think those go in cycles, and ecom had a huge boom during COVID. Yeah, kind of during COVID, and then there was definitely a pullback. And so yeah, I think like people were looking for other opportunities and and the people that like promote opportunities were looking for different opportunities. And, as well as then this kind of rise of the whole search funder model,
Mm.
and people like Cody, people like Walker Dybel with Buy Then Build, one of the earlier books, just kind of popularizing the acquisition entrepreneurship. And then people saw opportunity teaching people how to do this, and then that's popped up more and more and more people talking about acquiring brick and mortar type stuff. And there's definitely opportunity there. And we've worked with clients that have done some very successful brick and mortar acquisitions. And also, like everything, it's not easy. It's still complicated. The most successful people with any acquisitions, whether it's online or brick and mortar, that I've spoken to, often they've had to get their hands dirty at some point. And it wasn't just like they jumped into this opportunity and it just took off and everything was smooth. It was like, oh well, they came in, it was a mess. They had this huge learning curve that they weren't expecting. They were working 80-hour weeks for the first quarter or 6 months, and then they did get a hold of it, and then they were able to hire out, bring on additional support. They were able to eventually hire themselves out of the business. So it's not to say that there isn't opportunity, of course there is. But as with a lot of things, whether it's e-com or brick and mortar, the most successful ones, I think often like did put in the work. And yeah, it's like a little bit there's more of a learning curve than maybe the people that are promoting these opportunities are sometimes that they make it sound a little bit easier than it might be in reality. That's not to say that you can't have a ton of success with it. But yeah, also either online or brick and mortar is gonna take some work.
Yeah, that's been the case for as long as I've been alive and probably since the beginning of time is it's never as easy as they make it sound, right? Just I've been working on a book since I've, started in real estate. So, and I've got it partially written and one of these days I'll knock the dust off of it and see if I want to finish it. But I have the book title reserved. I have the website reserved. I have the cover designed already, and it's called "Get Rich Quick My Ass," and it's just
Mhm.
covering the different. It was mostly for real estate because a lot of people there were, I was so frustrated with all the real estate gurus saying, "Oh yeah, just buy real estate and you'll be wealthy." Like there's a lot of work in the real estate industry. It's a very vast industry, but I don't know of any super super easy ways, right? Unless you've already got money and you're lending it to somebody, and then you still gotta be able to get money out and get it back to you, right? You gotta be very selective of where it goes. So I don't think any of it's easy. I would tell you
Yeah.
that that would be the easiest route, but I just talked to a friend of mine who has $700,000 out. He don't know if he'll ever get back, right?
Yeah. I mean, I look forward to reading the book, and I think that that's a lot of advice that is it's really sorely needed. It's hard because everybody wants a magic bullet. Everybody wants the easy way. Everyone wants to get rich quick. Everyone wants passive income. So that's what gets clicks and attention, but the reality is it rarely is as easy or smooth as the people promoting the opportunity kind of make it out to be. And again, that's not to say that there isn't opportunity in all these things. It's just probably going to be harder and longer than you might hope. But also that's fine. Like, look, like I've, been, I guess I'm maybe 11, 12 years into my career. And at the beginning, I was like, oh, I just want to make 10K a month. And then that's enough money. And I don't know what 25 or 24. That's like, oh, 10K a month, then that's enough. Then I'm good. And then look, then you hit that. And then you realize that, like, probably one, that's probably not enough money. But then also, it's life goes on. Like, it's not, nothing changes. And just because you hit whatever marks today, this year, the future's not guaranteed. Things can happen, things change. And so yeah, I mean, it's cliche, but there is no making it. It's the journey and continuing on the journey. And so yeah, you get rich quick and then what? You're still you, you're still living. Nothing wrong with getting rich the slow and steady way.
Yeah, right. So you mentioned hard versus easy, and you've created businesses and you've bought them. So you've been the boots on the ground founder. You and your team's idea and implementation to revenue, and then you bought something that's up and running. What would you say? And I know it's a statistics show, but from the entrepreneurial's perspective, which is your preference, what do you think would be? I wouldn't say I don't think either one of them is easy. I wouldn't degrade either process for saying which one's the easiest. But which one do you favor now that you've started to and bought one?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think about this because so for example, I'm in preliminary talks about acquiring a competitor agency that a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, runs, and it's related services to my Amazon business. So with that business, it's not US based, so I wouldn't be able to use SBA financing. And he's open to different kind of structure. It doesn't have to be all cash up front. But yeah, but kind of thinking about like, okay, let's say for a business like that, I need to fork out $250,000, let's just say. And then it's like, okay, well, what if I invested that $250,000 into my own business? And it's like, what would push the needle more? And I don't know. I mean, I think like these things are it's not always so black and white and clear. I mean, if I was able to acquire that business with like a lot of leverage, I mean, leverage makes acquisitions a lot more attractive than
Mhm.
even if it's seller finance, but you still gotta pay that back out of the cash flow, and then that could be a pretty big strain on the cash flow. And so anyway, I think it's like anytime you're making a big investment, it's worth looking at. And I guess also to be clear, I guess I am thinking of new businesses that I could start or test that would cost maybe 15 grand out of pocket to try. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. This isn't a great answer to your question, but it's just like the answer of what's better: starting, acquiring, adding on services to existing businesses. It's kind of like a yes, both need, it's a both and kind of thing. And yeah, there's just stuff that I've learned is just with maybe something that'd be useful for listeners. And we've touched on this, but when it comes to acquisitions, it's like, it's a very complex puzzle, especially, there's debt, you have interest rates and repayments and this, and whether there's seller financing or not. And what happens to those businesses? Are they up, down, flat? How does that affect things? Or starting off, something new and taking that money and investing it in something, another idea, or investing it in an existing business. Like, I don't think there's not like a hard, clear, fast way to decide what's best. But I'd say the more opportunities you have, like the less clear the answer is. And it's like, oh, do I buy a business and bolt it on? Do I buy a business strategically that could cross sell to my other company? But then there's also supply constraints, and oh, well, like we couldn't just double because it's a service and we need team. And so maybe our current growth rate is actually ideal. So I should invest in something different. And not to dance around the answer, but just to paint a picture that it's not straightforward.
And you just gave everybody a beautiful view inside of an entrepreneur's mind, because that's what you go through. You thought out loud and thought the question out loud, and that's what everybody goes through when you're like, "Do I buy versus build?" And I think you, me, and a lot of other seasoned entrepreneurs we were taught that you're supposed to go out and build companies before we ever got taught that, hey, you could go buy them too. But the acquisition entrepreneurship, I mean, at least for me, wasn't I did my master's degree, my MBA was in 2007. That said, I don't remember the term ever coming up. As a matter of fact, I didn't know what ETA was until I started looking around thinking, I wanna buy a business next time. And then I started looking into one of those, what's out there, and, all these new phrases come up that I didn't even know existed. That was a beautiful, like, insight into what would go through the thought process you would go through. And I think both of us might be at a disadvantage because we know fairly well how to start a business. So sometimes when you're out there like, I should probably buy something that does X, Y, and Z, and you just can't find what you're looking for, you get frustrated and go, "You know what? I'll just build a thing."
You know something else that I've been thinking? So I listened to this great book, something the title's like How to Make a Few Billion Dollars. It's by this guy, Brad Jacobs, who has, built public company
Mhm.
CEO. He was the founder. And it's a really, really good book. Some really good business advice, as well as just like life advice, personal development. Anyway, he talks about acquisitions and how, as a public company, how compelling the multiple arbitrage is. And he was just like, oh, I think the best way to, the fastest way to grow our valuation is buy a company at a lower multiple and then absorb them into our public company that has a higher multiple, and boom, that's like a very clear benefit of doing acquisitions. And then when I think about that though, with my situation, it's like, like if I'm buying another company, even if I buy one other company to kind of bolt on, it's probably not going to have a huge impact on my valuation, maybe a little bit, but then it's like, you don't get that same benefit that a public company would. And also, it could be a distraction. That's a whole other, what about all the other projects that we have going on? It's just kind of like, I think there are very clear benefits to acquiring a company, but it's not this like blanket, oh, this is always the right move. It could be. There certainly are use cases where this is going to be like a great opportunity. Also, when it comes to like starting one, I think it's different. You or me, if we have background starting businesses, we like know what that's like. But if you've never started a business before, then acquiring one probably gonna save you. Well, you'll have different challenges, but like the success rate starting any new business is low. But if you've done it before, it's going to be a lot higher than if you haven't done it before. And so again, it's just like a complex answer. It depends on your, background and your situation. But yeah, I think about that Brad Jacobs book, and it's just like in that case, it's very clear. Like that's a very clear strategy. And also looking at myself, like I don't benefit from that strategy.
For the listeners out there, what he's talking about is the arbitrage between different tiers of businesses. So in most cases, there's at least three I can think off the top of my head. There's the what I call waking up the little giants, right? It's the waking up the private equity firms where they're even interested in you. Private equity will typically pay more than your SMB searcher will, right? Your SMB searcher, depending on the industry, is going to pay anywhere from on these brick and mortar pest control type of heat and air businesses. If you're mediocre run 1.5x to 3, maybe 4x, maybe through an SBA loan. If you're perfectly ran and you've got great documentation and everything's good, you might get 3x. The private equity guys will come in and they'll pay 6 or 7x for that same company. And then when I'm talking about X, it's 6 or 7 times the seller's discretionary earnings or EBITDA. But in order to wake them up, in most industries, you got to be above the $4 million in EBITDA. So $4 million in grossly defined as net profit. Horribly grossly defined as net profit, but that's probably the closest thing most people know to it. The next tier up is 10 million, right? What you're talking about, the publicly traded companies, they don't typically dip down to anything below that $10 million in seller's discretionary earnings. You can play the game. If you're riding along at, say, 2.5, 3 million, you know that you might exit in 3 or 4 years, and PE is starting to dip down into your industry at 4. The best thing you could do is find a way to get to 4, even if it's acquiring a competitor or something. But you just kind of like got to look at the industries and figure out you've got 2 kind of e-commerce logistic type of companies, and then one that's still a analytical logistics company. But it kind of, is in the financial realm. I guess that's what the Centurica would be, right? It's kind of a financial company. So
Yeah, and candidly, when I did the acquisition, I thought there was going to be a lot more synergies to be realized of like we do diligence on an e-commerce business, and then that turns into a lead for my agency, which it has happened, but like maybe once or twice of the I don't know, we've probably done over 100 e-com deals, and my like part of the thesis was that there would be more synergies between the diligence and the service companies. It hasn't worked out as much that way. That's not to say that we could totally be just like not doing it right or, like not selling the right way. But yeah, you're right. It is kind of now like and even that being said, the two do share some clients, but like direction that the freight forwarding business is going is actually towards a different clientele than the other agencies. So like there is some overlap, but it's total. And so that's the other, I don't know, maybe the lesson is like a lot of the synergies, I don't know, synergies are tough, and like reality might have a different plan.
you would think, your SellerPlex and your Centurica, you'd think that they would be a lot of, oh, by the way, you just bought that. You probably want to use these guys over here you could even like brand it as a Centurica recommends and do an introduction, set up the introduction call. But I would imagine that like anything else, each of these businesses have a persona, a particular customer they're looking for that is the sweet spot for that company, unless those really overlap. So I'll give you a quick example in my world. When I bought the pest control company, it's way too small, and it's still small. And I looked at one that looked really interesting. They did mostly commercial. Residential and commercial pest control are 2 different beasts. The bids on them are insane. I don't even know how the commercial guys do it unless they're spraying water. So I could never run out and buy a medium-sized or small commercial pest control company because the persona of our customers don't match. I'd have to learn their industry and then see what I could cross over. Maybe we do it that way. But and their profit margins are way smaller than the residential side. Residential pest control is a sweet business. I've been told at least one time I was 7x my next lowest bidder in that job. the personas don't match over. I just did it by, number of man hours it take to do it and the cost of goods I would need to deploy to do the facility.
I think again, the point is that just these things are complicated, and that it's like, it's not, I don't know, acquisitions are tough and like caution and prudence is often underutilized when you're exploring an acquisition. It's easy to get excited and, oh, like this is commercial cleaning and we do residential. It's so great. It's going to open up a whole new market. But the reality is like, oh, it's actually quite a different deliverable. We need different systems. We need different team. Like some of these synergies that we thought were going to be there actually aren't.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably more common in trying to piece together acquisitions than the latter of like, oh, wow, this just, every 1 + 1 = 10.
But, going back to your businesses, from a 50,000-foot view, you see, oh man, there's gonna be all these synergies. But I can get where fairly quickly you realize that each one of these companies has a very unique persona of a customer, a very unique sweet spot that you do your best work in, and,
Yeah.
it's hard to overlap those.
Yeah. And also it's just like business is hard, things change. And like the best that we can do for each company is like follow the best path we can imagine for that business. And
Mhm.
so we make plans and things change, markets change, situations change. And so with each of the companies, like it is best for each of the businesses to move forward in the direction that is going to be best for that business. And so with Centurica, and I mentioned expanding into more SMB, like that's, I think, the best strategy for Centurica. And you know what? That's actually not good for the synergies between my other businesses, but like more important than the synergies is like the individual business. And so same with the forwarding. It's like the good news is like we are finding like a good strategy forward for that business. The bad news is like it's not the most aligned with the strategy of the other business. And so you got to like take care of yourself first. And in these complex, systems, I guess it's probably rare that the best strategy for the individual business is going to actually be the best strategy for the other business. And so it just gets complicated.
I think unless you buy a competitor or supplier, you're probably gonna be dealing with this. Like, unless you already buy if you bought one of your suppliers and you've done business with them for years, you know how it works, you know what the synergies look like, and you bought them just because they were trying to retire and you wanna keep the prices right and you want to and you like their business, right? That would be one way that it would be a pretty quick fit. The other one was it's one of your competitors, you cross-sell. You take customers from them, they take customers from you. You know their product in and out because you've been trying to compete against it for a couple of years or more, and then they decide they wanna resire or sell. That would be a logistic thing. Now, the one thing that you get inside of that, there's so many complexities, right? It's a lot of the customers that left you to go to them, well, you didn't leave because the software was horrible. They left because they bumped heads with one of your tech guys or something like that, or the other guy offered a better price and, you're in a commodity war. And now they've got this ego tied into going back. So there's just so many complexities inside of all this stuff. They're moving targets, but hands down, in my view, and I'm 52 now, I don't think I want to start that many more businesses. Right? The whole if you start it, you got to find product market fit. You got to do all the different stuff. Make sure the customers. I like your model earlier where you said, well, there's some things I could do under 15,000. Those are the kinds of things I play with. I can do it under 15 or 20K and just see if the market wants it. There's a lot of businesses out there where you can test the market, and with the skill that you have in your history, the skill that, guys like me have, we're more apt and more likely to say, "Okay, this isn't working, we need to make a shift," faster and see it faster than a lot of guys who are so in love with what they're trying to create, they're gonna try to plow through it and figure it out. Do you agree with that? You believe that if you put 20K into something and started it, you would probably know in the first X number of months, maybe a year, year and a half.
I mean, yes, but the answer is a little more complicated because something I've learned is, if I'm starting a new business now, like I have a lot of different perspective and expectations and structure to that than if I was starting this 10 years ago. So now, let's say I'm trying to invest 20 grand or this, it'd be like in some of these opportunities that I'm thinking about, it's like, okay, well, like, can we validate a certain marketing channel? So maybe that's just say 4K, 5K to kind of throw at a marketing channel. It's like, okay, well, like, let's try that. Then, and there actually are some ways to kind of monetize just by, referrals, if that seems to work. It's like, okay, like if that seems to be validated, then invest more in kind of building out, okay, then like what's the next hire that we would need in order to kind of capitalize that or build out. And so it's kind of like a sequential plan. And I mean, man, I've thrown a lot of money at a lot of businesses over the years that didn't pan out. And it's like, all right, first we're gonna hire the big team. Then we're gonna actually see if this can actually make money. It's like, no, let's try to get to the validate earlier. And then I guess the point is like, if you're investing 20K into a new business, you can invest that money wisely, or you can invest that money not so wisely. And I would hope in my, with the experience that I've had now, that I would invest it more wisely than I would have if I was just starting. And this isn't to say that I still can make very, very poor investments, which I certainly do, but hopefully more informed than myself, 5, 10 years ago.
Yeah, I kind of related. I used to play poker a little bit, and I would stop in at lunch. I have lunch, and so I'm gonna play a little bit of poker over here at the casino there while I have lunch. And I've had more than one $500 or $600 cheeseburger, right? Or you just went in there to do something. There's been a few times in life where like, I'm just to try this business out, and you get hung up into it, and we're working on it. And I've had a few 4 figures, a couple 5 figures, and maybe at least two that I can think of 6 figure. Hey, I'm gonna see if the market wants this. And I did exactly what you're talking about on one of them. I went and hired the big team. I wrote all the code. I just knew the market needed something, and it turned out they didn't want it at all. And it was a really rough decision to learn after having 27 people on your staff working in all around the world. It was global, spending high 6 figures, almost crossed the 7 figure mark. Anyway, I appreciate your time today, man. I really like what you've got going on. If somebody's out there thinking about buying a business and they need some help doing a quality of earnings, or if they're out there needing logistics services and stuff, they want to learn more about what you do, or they've got their Amazon store and they want to learn about that, or hell, if they just want to learn from you and meet you, and you're an incredibly interesting guy. We haven't even covered all the different things. You traveled the world. You're yoga, right? You're a yoga master, whatever they call those guys. Very well-rounded human being. If somebody wants to reach out to you, what would be the fastest way somebody can, get a hold of you?
I mean, social media at Nate Ginsburg, pretty much on everything. Publishing more lately on all the platforms, or kind of getting back into that. And then for I think like particularly this audience, if they're looking at buying businesses, then Centurica.com. They need help on the quality of earnings.
Cool. And tell him you heard about him on how to exit, 'cause I want him to know. I want him to know that this works. So thank you today. Hang out for a few seconds and we'll call that a wrap.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
I want to announce our new channel partners, the ITX Marketplace. Since 1998, ITX has created $5 billion in value by selling more than 225 IT businesses in 20 countries. ITX works exclusively with IT-enabled businesses generating between $5 million and $30 million who are ready to be sold, and M&A decision makers who are ready to buy. For over 25 years, ITX has developed industry knowledge that helps determine whether a seller is a good fit for their buyers before making the match. ITX Mergers and Acquisition Marketplace we have partnered with has a proprietary database of 50,000 plus global buyers seeking IT service firms, managed service providers, Microsoft service providers, software as a service platforms, and channel partners with Microsoft, Oracle, ServiceNow, and the Salesforce space. If you have an IT-enabled business you're ready to sell, I want you to visit the itexchangenet.com/marketplace. How to exit. That link will be in the show notes. Visit them now.